importance of Cohen in all of this is that he is sort of really the witness who ties everything to Trump and says that he was acting. So Cohen made the payment to Daniels, and said that he did so on Trump's direction. That Trump was then reimbursed him, and was aware of this scheme to sort of falsify business records in order to conceal Cohen's reimbursement. Now, what Trump's attorneys have done over the course of several days is to try and paint Cohen as a sort of a partisan, essentially, as someone who was originally obsessed and very loyal to Donald Trump, but then tried to blame all of his problems on Trump afterwards, and sort of turned on his former master, as it were. They've been able to point to lies that Cohen told to Congress when he was still sort of in the Trump fold, as Cohen puts it, which Cohen says he told at Trump's direction.
Now, Donald Trump's hush money trial is entering its final stage, with Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, once again back on the stand. He faced some tough questioning from the former president's lawyers and admitted he'd stolen tens of thousands of dollars from his ex-boss's company, an admission that defense lawyers hope to use to undermine his credibility. Donald Trump himself spoke outside the courtroom and once again said the case was an attempt to undermine his political campaign.
This is a witch hunt. This is to damage crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, by far, to damage his political opponent. That's all this is.
Well, Donald Trump faces 34 felony counts of falsifying business records, and he has pleaded not guilty. The Times' New York correspondent Will Pavia has been following the proceedings. Good evening to you, Will.
Good evening, Carol.
Tell us more about what we heard in court today.
Well, there was a few dramas today. We had, of course, Cohen wrapping up his testimony. He's been under a sort of very grueling cross-examination, which actually started last Tuesday. There's been breaks in the court calendar, so he's been testifying for about nearly 4 days. So this was his fourth day today. As you said, he was questioned about apparently stealing $30,000 from his employer. Now, this was in relation to a tech company that he engaged apparently to rig an online poll about who was the greatest businessman or the most famous businessman of the last century. Now, Trump wanted to be high up in the charts and he was quite low down. And Cohen said that a company called Redfinch said that it could buy some IP addresses and run an algorithm that would rise him in the chart. And Cohen said, we thought about making him number one, but we thought that would raise certain red flags. So we pushed him up to number 9. But then the poll was discontinued by the cable network that had sort of been running it, and Trump was dissatisfied and refused to pay the tech company. And Cohen said eventually he took out the money himself and paid the tech executive $20,000 in a paper bag, but then claimed that he'd paid $50,000 when he was talking to the Trump organization. So that's the basis of that particular charge.
It is an extraordinary twist. Of course, this hinges on whether Donald Trump was paying hush money to make sure that stories about his relationship with Stormy Daniels didn't get out before the election. And he's just pointing this, trying to portray all of this as politically motivated, isn't he?
He is. I mean, the importance of Cohen in all of this is that he is sort of really the witness who ties everything to Trump and says that he was acting. So Cohen made the payment to Daniels, and said that he did so on Trump's direction. That Trump was then reimbursed him, and was aware of this scheme to sort of falsify business records in order to conceal Cohen's reimbursement. Now, what Trump's attorneys have done over the course of several days is to try and paint Cohen as a sort of a partisan, essentially, as someone who was originally obsessed and very loyal to Donald Trump, but then tried to blame all of his problems on Trump afterwards, and sort of turned on his former master, as it were. They've been able to point to lies that Cohen told to Congress when he was still sort of in the Trump fold, as Cohen puts it, which Cohen says he told at Trump's direction. But he's also Cohen has also spoken about lying in court on other occasions too. So that's been a real problem, I think, for prosecutors, because he is the key witness and the star of the show at the moment.
And how much longer is this trial expected to last, Will?
Well, we have probably the defence will rest tomorrow, is the expectation. There'll be a charging conference, but they're not going to do closing statements till next week. So the jury will probably get the case next week and start deliberating.
Still some way to go. Will Pavia, Times New York correspondent, thank you very much indeed.
Mr. Trump, how's Bob Costello doing?
Was he staring down the judge? So thank you very much. You saw what we saw. That was an incredible display. I've never seen anything like it in my life. A tyrant. And everyone's talking about it. This is what we have. We have an acting judge, appointed judge by Democrats, by the club. And they're keeping now, I guess this is our 4th week, soon to be our 5th week. Not campaigning, but you saw what happened, what just took place in that court. And hopefully the motion to dismiss this trial will go through, because this trial is a disaster for our country. It's a disaster for New York State, New York City. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. This is a witch hunt. This is a witch hunt. This is to damage crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country, by far, to damage his political opponent. That's all this is. A highly political judge, a totally conflicted judge, who just did something that nobody's ever seen. And the press is not happy, I don't imagine. They just got thrown out of a courthouse. Nobody's ever seen anything quite like it. I'm not even being charged for it. They didn't know what to charge him. They haven't even charged me with the crime. You know what the crime is? I beat Hillary Clinton. That's what the crime is. And they don't want me to beat, on behalf of, I think, 200 million people, they don't want me to beat Biden. The judge wouldn't allow that. The Southern District, highly respected, a book of 28 pages, I believe, or more, of lies. We're not allowed to put it in. The expert witness that we have, the best there is in election law, Brad Smith. He's considered the Rolls Royce, or we'll bring it back to an American car, Cadillac. But the best there is. He can't testify, not being allowed to testify. And you saw what happened to a highly respected lawyer today, Bob Costello. Wow. I've never seen anything like that. Highly respected. But remember this, we can't put in an expert witness. We're not allowed to put in an expert witness. Nobody's ever heard of it before. You know, election law is very complicated, actually. And we're not allowed to have an expert witness because the judge wants to rule on it. He said, we don't need an expert witness, I guess. He said he'll rule on it. No, he needs help. And we have the #1 person, either side will admit it, Brad Smith, on a very complex law where we did nothing wrong. I will tell you that right now. And he doesn't want him to testify. That's because he's going to say we did nothing wrong. I think the case is going very well. We've asked for termination of the case. This case should be terminated. This shouldn't go anywhere. It should be terminated right now. And New York State has to build up its system again. New York State can't let this happen. Can't let this happen. There were no crimes. We did nothing wrong. And I want to get back to campaigning. I'm representing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people. In the meantime, Russia and China are now good friends. They want to take over the world. Iran is developing a nuclear weapon. And that's not going to be an easy situation when they have it. North Korea is getting frisky, and I get along with him very well, but the current administration, they don't even know his name. We have a lot of things to solve. Inflation's hitting new highs. You see that? They're hitting new highs. I should be out campaigning so we can turn the country around. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Are you trying to